My name is Barbara Bowman, and I'm an early childhood educator.
Barbara's just one of these larger-than-life legendary figures.
At present, I'm the Irving B. Harris Professor of Child Development at Erikson Institute.
She will certainly go down in history as a pioneer in the field of early childhood education.
I'm one of the founders of the Institute, which provides graduate degrees in child development and social work.
Erikson is an institution that first believes in science, authentic research. But Erikson also believes in being current and having open and honest dialogue. And so you become part of conversations with current leaders, and those conversations become the active forming solutions to the problems of our day.
During the course of my career, I've taught at the preschool and college level, been chief officer for early childhood for the Chicago Public School, and consultant to the U.S. Department of Education.
Come up with a plan that funds the social services, but it's not just state pre-K that is in trouble, but all the Department of Children and Family Services, the Health Department, all of the social services are in the same bind, and they're all using stimulus money now. When that runs out, unless the state steps in, we will have to start cutting programs and cut them short.
I've also lived, taught, and consulted in a number of different foreign countries. I've been active in our professional organizations, including president of NAYSU. In addition, I've served on many committees, commissions, and boards devoted to the care and education of young children. Anita Cockrell was my role model and mentor. A strong believer in the competence of Black children, she led a nursery school for 40 years, integrating the latest research, teaching parents, and training teachers. She believes parents and teachers should pay attention to the children's physical and emotional health, but also teach them the skills and knowledge to achieve in school. If you went to her nursery school, you learned the alphabet and numbers and what they were for. Mrs. Cockrell preceded me as the first Black teacher at the University of Chicago Nursery School and was active in the larger early childhood community. The city of Chicago named a school in her honor. She was my nursery school teacher and my friend, a real legend in the field.
We are so varied in terms of the number of committees that you have to go through, whether or not it goes from the department to the college to the provost, or whether it goes from the department straight up to the provostial level. You really have to understand what the process is where you are.
I'm Paula D Mclean. I'm the James B. Duke Distinguished Professor of Political Science and Professor of Public Policy at Duke University. I'm also Dean of the Graduate School and Vice Provost for Graduate Education. I owe almost all of my success to my mentor, Harold Milton Rose. Harold was born in Nashville, Tennessee, raised in Mount Pleasant, entered Tennessee State University at the age of 16, then went to Ohio State and did a master's degree, earning his PhD in geography in 1960. I encountered Harold not when I was in graduate school because I went to Howard University, but when I was a new young assistant professor in political science at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And Harold was in the Department of Geography and Urban Affairs. And he wandered into my office one day, and we just struck up not only a mentorship, but a friendship. And Harold taught me how to be a scholar. Harold Rose started out his geographical research in kind of natural resources conservation. But then he moved into racial segregation and how segregation was not only spatial in terms of how Black communities were segregated, but a social process. Harold was elected president of the Association of American Geographers in 1976, and he is and still is the only Black president of that association.
Okay, let's look at MLK Boulevard in Baltimore. I want to show you how to see housing segregation in schools, in health, in family wealth, in policing.
Harold's work was just on the cutting edge, and he is and still remains one of the top urban geographers, one of the top geographers of his time and of our time. And like I said, he taught me how to be a scholar.
And a related matter to education is the importance of diversity in education. It's important not only for the moral reasons of ending discrimination, but it's important for some other reasons.
My name is Phillip Clay. I grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina. I went to college at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and MIT, where I received my PhD. I taught there for 41 years, including 10 years as Chancellor of the Institute. I've also had many other opportunities to serve. I was a founding director of the MasterCard Foundation, a trustee of the Kresge Foundation, and chairman of the board of the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, among many other activities.
It became my passion to advance the same passion for higher education in Africa. There were a few initiatives over the time that I worked with other countries, but the passion was not there, and there was often more resistance than there was initiative.
I've had a wonderful career and many opportunities to work with great people on the frontiers of change and advancement of our communities and our institutions. I could not have done that had I not had the foundation of a great education, given to me by the grandchildren of former slaves who were teachers at a high school in North Carolina, in Wilmington, my hometown. The name of the school, which no longer exists sadly, is the Williston Senior High School. The school was established within weeks after the Civil War ended by freedmen, missionaries, and philanthropists who wanted the youngsters of freed slaves to have the kind of education that would make a difference for them. I was prepared by people who were committed to teaching. These were the children of the first black middle class. They thought that teaching was designed for them to be the opportunity to bring other young people along in ways that are better than what exists in many urban high schools today, where young people graduate not nearly prepared as they need to be for the world they face. So I want to dedicate and honor those teachers. They made me what I am, and for that I'm grateful and proud, and hope that others can do the same for you.
For 131 years, Latin has continually redefined excellence in liberal arts education for a changing world. Our vision for today and beyond challenges us to make learning even more personal, inquiry-based, and inclusive for every member of the Latin community.
My name is Randall Dunn. I am the head of the Latin School of Chicago. I've been in education for over 30 years, and my passion for the work and my impact in my work has largely been influenced by my role model from when I was in 8th grade, and that person's name is Iris Husbands. She was my 8th grade advisor and counselor and mentor. She saw me as a kid and pushed me in the right direction, and I always looked up to her as an educator who cared about kids deeply, about their success, not just in the here and now, but their success in their lives and their future. It's been a role model for how I engage with students and how I continue to engage with individuals around education and the importance of that in your life. Ms. Husbands made sure that I got the attention that I needed, and then she made sure that I made the best decisions for my next step, which moved me to a private school, an independent school that changed the trajectory of my life and is the reason that I do what I do.
I did my best to stay optimistic, and I worked hard. And when A Better Chance, a program similar to Chicago's High Jump, helped me gain access to a Boston private school similar to Latin, I feared the unknown, but boy, I jumped at that chance. Everything snowballed from there. I went to a great college that I might otherwise never have heard of. I became a teacher because education was the defining pivot in my life.
My name is Richard Oliver Hope. I have a PhD in sociology after attending Morehouse College, the class of '61, Columbia University, and Syracuse, where I received my doctorate degree. I was professor of sociology at several institutions to include Brooklyn College, Morgan State University, Indiana University, MIT, Princeton University, and I was vice president of the Woodrow Wilson Foundation.
The Pickering Fellowship began as a Foreign Affairs Fellows program. And prior to that, I had been talking to a lot of different people about programs that would put international affairs more prominently.
During my career, I established educational programs to expand minorities in various opportunities, to include the Department of State, the Department of Defense, Department of Agriculture, and in South Africa, where I worked with President Mandela.
During the long years when we were in prison, you did not forget us. Neither did you abandon our struggling people. You enlisted the most cherished beliefs of your religious calling.
I've had several role models and mentors. First, my parents, Elise and John Hope, who taught me educational discipline, and the legacy of my grandparents, John and Eugenia Hope.
But she'd tell it like it is. I mean, she was a kind of a street organizer in Chicago. Frankly, he did not want to go to Atlanta University. He did not. He had not finished his work at Morehouse. His life really was all about Morehouse. I mean, if you boil it down to sort of what motivated him.
Second, Reverend William Faulkner, who was minister of my church in Nashville, Tennessee. Benjamin Mays, who was president of Morehouse College. Kenneth B. Clark. I did quite a few studies of Harlem education with Kenneth B. Clark.
In fact, what the Brown decision said under the aegis of Chief Justice Warren, and at long last, the promises of democracy and equality inherent in the American Constitution will no longer be denied to American citizens on the basis of race.
And finally, Martin Luther King Jr., who was very influential, as he was with many students who were in SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
Please join with me and give a warm WHA welcome to Professor Quintard Taylor, the 2011 President of the Western History Association.
I'm Quintard Taylor, the Scott and Dorothy Bullitt Professor of American History, Emeritus at the University of Washington. As such, I held the oldest endowed chair at the university from 1999 to 2018. Before that, I taught 9 years at the University of Oregon, 1 year at the University of Lagos in Nigeria, 13 years at California Polytechnic State University, and 4 years at Washington State University. I was a specialist in African American history in the West in all of those institutions, and over the years, I published a number of books. My most important are The Forging of a Black Community, In Search of the Racial Frontier, which was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, and Dr. Sam, an autobiography which I co-authored with Dr. Samuel Kelly. I have written over 50 scholarly articles on African American history, Afro-Brazilian history, and comparative ethnic history, and I served as the 50th president of the Western History Association. How do we get African American history out of the classroom and into the general public? How do we make sure that anyone with a computer can have access to African history? And the answer is BlackPast. But my most important accomplishment has been blackpast.org. I founded the website in 2007 at the University of Washington. Since then, more than 42 million people, including 4 million so far this year, have used its resources. The most important educational role models for me were my parents, Grace Brown Taylor and Quintard Taylor Sr. Although Grace Taylor had only 1 year of college, she understood the value of education. She introduced me to historical research by not answering my many questions about the civil rights movement in the mid-1960s South that was going on all around us. Instead, she required me to look up those answers in the encyclopedia that she purchased to ensure that I would have information available in our home because the local public library was closed to Black people. It was that childhood activity that taught me the value of research to answer fundamental historical questions. My father's role was different. He completed only the 2nd grade, but he shared my mother's commitment to education. He was a great lover of stories, and I still recall one that inspires me to this day. When I was small, he said to me, "Why is it when a man and a lion fight, the lion always loses?" And I said, "Pop, I don't know." He quickly responded, "The lion never learned to write." By my college years, I fully understood the meaning of that story. We Black people are going to have to learn to write our own history rather than rely on others to do it, or worse, allow that history to continue to remain untold. I committed myself to be that lion, and I did everything possible, especially through BlackPast, to ensure that other lions would help to write African American history, so that it would be known not just to Black folks, but to the entire world. For that, I thank my first history teachers, Grace Brown Taylor and Quintara Taylor Sr.
My name is Timuel D. Black, born 1918 in Birmingham, Alabama. I arrived in Chicago in 1919 at the age of 8 months and have lived on the South Side from that period until the present. And I became a teacher after I returned from World War II, after I had been in the combat area most of the time in Europe. And I had a feeling of dedication as exemplified by my parents and neighbors to try to make this a better community, a better world. And so when I returned from World War II, at first, given other things, I was a social worker. And I saw the young people who had to live in foster homes and other. So I saw how difficult it was for them to see a future. And I transferred my work behavior from social work to education. And there I stayed, remained for the period before my retirement. And so I found that education, as far as my experience, was a way in which to help young people, whatever the race or background happened to be, that they could have a better future, I am proud to say that many students that I had even 60, 70 years ago called me to thank me for inspiring them to get the education that would help their future.